Hi, my name is Barb Melera. I'm part of the team at Harvesting History. We are an upstate New York heirloom horticultural company that very much loves this country. Every year at 4th of July, on July 1, 2, 3, and 4, we publish 4 newsletters that tell a remarkable story about gardening and the role it may have played in the development of this nation. Since many of our YouTube subscribers don't subscribe to our newsletter, we've decided this year to put that same story on video. And we hope you enjoy it as much as our newsletter people have told us they enjoy it. The story begins in May of 1787 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where 55 delegates from 12 of the original 13 colonies were meeting to try to put together a structure that would eventually lead to the Constitution of the United States. Rhode Island had boycotted the convention, so there were only 12 of the original 13 colonies that were there. In late May, an incredible heat wave hit the city and lasted for nearly 7 weeks. It was unprecedented in the history of the city. The men, all 55 of them, were meeting in a brick building, and because they were afraid of spies, all of the windows were closed, all of the shades were drawn, and all of the drapes were drawn. So you can imagine that the temperature in that room was probably well over 100 degrees. And these men were dressed in wool, cotton, and linen layers. They had to be very, very warm. And in fact, many of them began to succumb to certain elements of heat prostration. So by the end of June, these 55 delegates had argued and argued and argued and had only been able to agree on one thing: that the government should have 3 branches: an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative branch. Beyond that, they could not agree on anything. The arguments, as well as the air temperature, were very heated, and in many cases lacked any semblance of civility. And these were gentlemen. Remember, these were gentlemen in that day. So what happened is, in early July, a compromise was offered. It was called the Connecticut Compromise. And the delegates all agreed that they would argue the merits and faults of that program during the week that started July the 9th and ended on Friday, July the 13th. And then on Monday, July the 16th, they would vote. Almost every one of the 55 delegates believed that the compromise would be voted down, and they would leave the Constitutional Convention having not put together a government, and so having not put together the nation that became known as the United States of America. In the evening of Friday the 13th, a number of the delegates went to their various boarding houses and then agreed to meet and have dinner. And they did have a polite and presentable dinner, and during the course of that dinner, one of the gentlemen said to the rest, "I am going to Bartram's garden tomorrow. Would anybody like to accompany me?" Remember, the heat wave was still on when he made that suggestion. But it turns out that several men decided that they thought it was a good idea and that they would accompany this gentleman on this trip to Bartram's garden. Bartram's garden was about an hour away. And so early on the morning of Saturday the 14th, 12 men got into various carriages at 5 and made the 1-hour trek out to Bartram's garden, where at 6 a.m. they came upon William, the son of John Bartram, who was already toiling in his garden.